Days passed and Daniel's presence became a quiet rhythm in Emily and Noah's life. He didn't impose, didn't demand attention, but simply existed in small, meaningful ways. He would drop by occasionally with Max or leave a little note for Emily with coffee or groceries when she seemed worn down. Sometimes, he offered a helping hand with minor repairs around the house or joined Noah in the backyard for a simple game of catch. Each gesture, small as it was, carried warmth, thoughtfulness, and a steady sense of care that Emily realized she had been missing for years. One afternoon, Emily came home after a long day at work. Her shoulders ached and her mind felt heavy with endless tasks. But when she opened the door, she saw Daniel sitting on the porch with Max and Noah. Noah waved enthusiastically, rushing to greet her. Daniel stood to meet her with a smile that was easy and unforced, the kind that made her chest feel light despite her exhaustion. "I thought I could keep him company." "While you took a breather," Daniel said softly, his eyes meeting hers with quiet understanding. "No pressure, of course." Emily nodded, grateful. "Thank you. That would be nice." Noah ran ahead, laughing as he threw Max's ball across the yard. Emily stepped onto the porch, taking a deep breath. Watching them interact, she felt an unexpected peace settle over her. The laughter of her son, the playful energy of Max, and Daniel's patient presence created a small, perfect bubble in her otherwise chaotic life. They sat together, Emily on the porch swing, Daniel beside her. While Noah darted around the yard, conversation flowed easily between them. They spoke about books, movies, and simple memories from childhood. Daniel shared anecdotes about his travels, and Emily laughed at his humorous observations. The atmosphere was light, but beneath it lay a subtle intimacy, a sense of shared understanding neither had to force. At one point, Emily found herself opening up about her fears, the ones she rarely voiced. She spoke of the loneliness that crept in after her marriage ended, the nights she spent worrying about Noah, and the moments when she doubted her own strength. Daniel listened without interruption, his gaze steady, his presence calming. When she finished, he reached out and placed a hand gently over hers. "You've been carrying so much," he said softly. "It's okay to let someone in to share the weight. You don't have to do everything alone." Emily's throat tightened. She hadn't realized how much she had longed for this. For someone to see her struggle and still offer support without judgment. She looked into his eyes and felt a quiet, steady warmth that made her heart ache with longing she hadn't admitted even to herself. Noah came bounding back, holding a stick as if it were a treasure. "Mom, can we go to the park tomorrow?" he asked, his eyes bright with excitement. Emily smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied. Then she looked at Daniel, who chuckled. "We can make it a small adventure," he suggested, his tone playful yet gentle. The evening stretched on with conversation, laughter, and shared silences. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, Emily felt an unusual lightness in her chest. The heaviness she had carried for years seemed to ease, replaced with a cautious but growing hope. Daniel didn't rush her or push her into anything. His presence alone was enough to make her feel seen, appreciated, and quietly cherished. After Noah went to bed, Emily found herself standing by the window looking out at the empty street. Daniel's figure had disappeared around the corner, but the warmth of his presence lingered. She reflected on the days they had shared, the laughter, the small gestures, the gentle kindness. She realized she hadn't felt this hopeful, this lightly excited about tomorrow. In years. The next morning, Emily woke early, filled with anticipation. Noah was already up, bouncing with energy, asking about the park and Daniel. She smiled, preparing breakfast, feeling a quiet thrill at the thought of sharing another day with someone who made both her son and her feel seen. Later, at the park, Daniel joined them. He played with Noah, chased him on the swings, and offered gentle encouragement during little games of skill and balance. Emily watched him interact with her son, noticing how natural and kind he was. There was no pretension, no agenda's presence, patience, and a gentle joy in the small moments. As the afternoon sun warmed the park, Emily found herself walking alongside Daniel. Conversation flowed easily between them, soft and unhurried. They spoke of dreams, of hopes, of small things that mattered more than anyone expected. Emily felt herself relaxing completely, letting go of the walls she had built around her heart. She realized that Daniel wasn't just a neighbor or a friend, he was becoming someone essential to the life she had carefully crafted by evening. When they returned home, Noah was exhausted but happy. Daniel stayed long enough to help settle him, reading a bedtime story with a patience Emily admired. Once Noah was asleep, Emily and Daniel stood quietly on the porch, the air filled with a comfortable silence. "I never expected to feel this." "At ease," Emily admitted, her voice soft. "After everything, I thought I was done hoping for companionship." Daniel smiled gently, looking at her with steady eyes. "Sometimes life surprises us. We meet people when we least expect it, and they bring small pieces of joy we didn't know we needed." Emily felt a lump in her throat. She had spent so long protecting her heart, so long believing she had to be strong for Noah and for herself. But Daniel's presence reminded her that life could still hold gentle surprises. She realized that she could allow herself to hope, to trust, and even to imagine a future that included someone who cared as deeply as she did. They lingered on the porch until the stars began to appear, their soft light reflecting the calm that had settled between them. Emily knew that her life wasn't suddenly perfect responsibilities. Work and the daily challenges of single parenthood still awaited, but something fundamental had changed. She felt less alone, more supported, and quietly excited for the future. In the following days, Daniel continued to be a steady presence. Never rushing, never overstepping, always considerate. He became a part of their routine, a comforting thread woven into the fabric of their lives. Emily noticed how natural it felt to share small moments with him, how easy it was to laugh and speak freely. Noah thrived in this environment too, sensing the calm and safety Daniel brought. One evening, as Emily tucked Noah into bed, she whispered softly, "Maybe tomorrow we'll have another day just like today." And for the first time in a long while, she truly believed it. Daniel's gentle care, patience, and consistent presence had not only eased her burdens, but had rekindled a spark of hope she thought was lost forever. Emily realized that love didn't have to be dramatic or overwhelming. Sometimes it arrived quietly through kindness, understanding, and the willingness to be present. She closed her eyes that night, feeling something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of peace, trust, and the possibility that life could hold not just responsibility and struggle, but connection, joy, and love. For Emily, the days with Daniel weren't just about companionship. They were about rediscovering herself, learning to let go of constant fear and worry, and opening her heart to the gentle possibilities that life had begun to offer again. And as she drifted off to sleep, she knew that tomorrow would bring more laughter, more quiet conversations, and perhaps, in time, a love that was steady, kind, and deeply meaningful. As Noah played fetch with Max, Emily and Daniel stepped aside to sit on the porch steps. The evening sky was painted with streaks of pink and orange as the sun dipped lower. They sat in comfortable silence at first, listening to Noah's laughter and the sound of paws hitting the grass. Then slowly, their conversation began to flow. Daniel told her about moving into the neighborhood after a difficult divorce, about how he had thought starting fresh would heal him. But most nights, the silence of his house was louder than the city noise he'd left behind. Emily shared pieces of her own story, her marriage that ended too soon, the endless juggling of work and motherhood, the quiet ache of wishing she could feel seen again. They didn't share everything, but enough to sense that they both carried bruises life had left behind. And somehow talking about it didn't feel heavy. It felt like breathing easier at one point. Noah ran up, holding Max's ball proudly. "Mom, Max is the best dog ever. Can he come over again tomorrow?" Emily looked at Daniel, unsure, but his smile was soft, patient, waiting for her to decide. "If your mom says yes," he said kindly. Noah turned those pleading eyes on her again. Emily laughed despite herself, shaking her head. "We'll see," she said, but her voice was lighter than it had been in months. As the evening darkened, Daniel called Max and stood. "Thank you for letting me intrude," he said. "I didn't mean to overstep." "You didn't," Emily replied honestly. She wanted to say more, to thank him for listening, for showing up, for noticing her in ways no one had in a long time. But the words stayed tucked inside, fragile and unspoken. Noah hugged Max goodbye, his laughter echoing as the dog wagged one last time before following Daniel home. Emily watched them walk down the path, the street lamp casting a soft glow around them. Something about the way Daniel turned back and waved before disappearing into the night made her chest ache with both fear and hope. When she closed the door, Noah was still smiling, already asking when Max could come again. Emily tucked him into bed, brushing his hair back as he whispered, "Mom, I like Mr. Daniel. He's nice. He makes you smile." She froze for a moment, startled by how easily her son had noticed what she hadn't admitted even to herself. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "Good night, sweetheart." Later, when the house was quiet, Emily sat by the window, staring out into the night. She thought about Daniel's words, about not carrying everything alone, and about the way his eyes had met hers with such steady kindness. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, she found herself curious about the neighbor who knocked on her door twice. Curious about the laughter he had brought into her son's evening. Curious about the possibility of something new. It was just a small conversation on a porch. Just a neighbor returning a ball. But to Emily, it felt like more. It felt like the start of something that might gently change everything. And as she closed her eyes that night, she whispered to herself, maybe tomorrow won't feel so lonely after all. The next evening, Emily returned home from work with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Her day had been long, filled with deadlines and phone calls. Yet she had found herself glancing forward to seeing Noah, imagining his laughter as he ran to greet her. She parked the car and carried her bag inside, and just as she hung her coat, she noticed Daniel standing near the front yard. Leaning against the fence, he waved awkwardly when he saw her. A smile that was easy and natural, unlike the forced politeness of most adult conversations. Noah, who had been waiting near the door, squealed in delight. "Mr. Daniel," he shouted, running toward him with small, quick steps. Emily felt her heart lift, watching their easy camaraderie. Daniel crouched to meet him, scratching Max behind the ears, and Noah giggled. Hugging the dog tightly, Emily hesitated at the doorway, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and caution. "Hi," she said softly, not wanting to disturb the moment between them. "Hey, Emily." Daniel replied, his tone low, calm, inviting. "I thought Noah might enjoy some company while you take a breather. If that's okay, of course." Her chest warmed, and she found herself nodding. "Of course." "Thank you." Noah ran back to her, tugging at her sleeve. "Mom, can Mr. Daniel stay? Please." Emily laughed, and for the first time in months, she let herself relax. She had been so used to doing everything alone that the idea of someone else sharing even a small part of her evening felt like a small, stolen luxury. She went to the kitchen to make tea, glancing out at the yard where Daniel and Noah were tossing the ball for Max. The sound of their laughter was light and infectious, a balm to her tired mind. When she returned to the porch, Daniel was sitting on the steps, Noah leaning against him, tired but happy. Emily sat beside them, feeling a quiet connection she hadn't expected. The evening air was cool, the sky painted in soft hues of pink and lavender. And for a moment, they simply sat together, sharing the silence. "You have a wonderful boy," Daniel said quietly. "You must be very proud." Emily nodded, her voice catching slightly. "He's my world. Sometimes I forget I need to be proud of myself, too, not just of him." Daniel's gaze softened. "You're doing more than you think. And I can see how much you care. It shows in every little thing." Her throat tightened at the words. Most people only saw her as a single mother trying to manage. Very few noticed the exhaustion and effort hidden behind her calm exterior. Daniel did. And that recognition, that simple acknowledgement, touched her in a way she hadn't realized she had missed. Noah suddenly jumped up, calling for Max to chase him again. Emily smiled, watching her son dash across the lawn, carefree and joyous. Daniel followed him with a fond, quiet gaze, and Emily realized that she was watching more than just her son. She was observing someone who could understand, someone who might be trusted. They talked quietly, letting the conversation drift naturally. Daniel shared memories of his own childhood, small stories of family trips and simple joys, while Emily told him little details about Noah's school, his favorite snacks, and the way he always asked 100 questions at bedtime. It wasn't heavy or dramatic. It was real, honest, and slow, like sunlight filling a dark room. Daniel listened attentively, never interrupting, never judging. Emily realized how rare that was, to find someone who just listened and understood without an agenda. It made her want to share more, to trust him more. She realized how much she had been craving that kind of presence in her life, someone steady, kind, and caring. Noah returned with Max, panting and smiling, holding the ball triumphantly. "See, Mom? Max loves me." Emily laughed softly. "He does," she said, ruffling Noah's hair. Her eyes met Daniel's. She noticed a quiet understanding there, a connection that wasn't rushed but felt important. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. The warmth of the day faded, replaced by the gentle coolness of evening. Daniel stood, gathering Max's leash. "I should get him home before it gets too late," he said softly. Emily felt a pang of reluctance as she nodded. "Thank you," she said, "for staying tonight, for everything." Daniel smiled, brushing a hand through his hair. "I didn't do anything special. I just wanted to be here. For Noah and for you, too, I guess." Emily felt a blush rise to her cheeks. There was a vulnerability in his words, an honesty that made her heart beat faster than it had in years. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was just managing life alone. She felt seen, appreciated, even wanted. Noah hugged Daniel tightly before releasing him. "Can you come again tomorrow?" he asked eagerly. Daniel laughed, crouching to Noah's height. "We'll see, maybe. If it's okay with your mom." Emily smiled, realizing she wanted it to be okay. She nodded, unable to hide her small, hopeful grin. "Yes, that would be nice." As Daniel walked down the path with Max, he turned back briefly, giving Emily a small wave. The streetlight highlighted the quiet warmth in his eyes, the gentle steadiness of a presence that didn't demand but offered. Emily closed the door slowly, feeling a flutter in her chest. She looked at Noah. It was still buzzing with excitement, and tucked him into bed. "Good night, my little adventurer," she whispered. Brushing his hair back, once the house was quiet, Emily moved to the window and watched the empty street. Daniel's figure had disappeared into the shadows, yet she could still feel the impact of his presence. Something subtle but significant had shifted. She realized she was looking forward to tomorrow, to the possibility of more moments like this, small but powerful. Her heart was alive with quiet anticipation, a gentle hope she had almost forgotten. The evening had brought laughter, companionship, and the realization that she didn't have to face life entirely alone. And as she finally went to bed, Emily whispered to herself, "Maybe tomorrow something good will start to grow." The night wrapped around her gently, carrying a sense of possibility and calm she hadn't felt in years. Daniel had not just returned a ball or kept Noah company, had returned a spark of connection, a reminder that life could still bring unexpected warmth and joy. And in that quiet, Emily felt ready to let a little more light in, to trust, to hope, and to begin imagining a life where laughter and companionship weren't fleeting but shared. Emily stood in the small living room, watching her son, Noah, sink into the couch with a bowl of popcorn almost bigger than his hands. The glow from the television lit up his face as he giggled at the cartoons. She loved seeing him laugh, was the sound that kept her going even on the hardest days. She brushed his hair back and smiled. "You watch TV and I'll take a shower right now," she told him softly, her voice carrying that mix of love and weariness that came from being both mother and father. Noah nodded eagerly, already lost in his show, and Emily slipped down the hallway toward the bathroom. For her, the shower wasn't just about cleaning up. It was the one time of the day she felt she could breathe. Life had been heavy since her marriage ended. Every bill, every decision, every tearful bedtime, it all rested on her shoulders. She tried to hide her struggles from Noah, keeping her smile strong for him. But behind closed doors, when the water poured over her, she could finally let her guard down. The bathroom mirror showed a woman she barely recognized. Her eyes still carried sparks of the young girl she used to be, but they were tired now, softened by years of responsibility. She had once dreamed of love that swept her off her feet, of nights filled with laughter, of a partner who saw her fully. Those dreams had been pushed aside, replaced with work schedules, school drop-offs, and lonely evenings. She wasn't bitter. She had made peace with her life, but sometimes, late at night, she missed the feeling of being wanted. She stepped into the shower and closed her eyes as the warm water slid over her skin. The noise of cartoons in the background muffled through the walls gave her comfort. Noah was safe, and she had these few minutes for herself. She thought about how quickly he was growing. 6 years old already. It scared her how fast time was moving, how soon he wouldn't need her in the same way anymore. She wished someone else could see her the way she saw him, with unconditional love. With patience, with admiration. As the steam filled the small room, she let her thoughts wander. She remembered the early days of her marriage, when love felt easy and the future looked bright. Back then, she believed she had found her forever. But promises broke and love turned cold. She had walked away carrying Noah with her, determined to build a safer life for him, even if it meant being alone. Still, in quiet moments like this, when the house was calm and she didn't have to be strong, the loneliness crept back in. She wrapped herself in a towel and stood still for a moment, listening. The sound of Noah's laughter echoed down the hall. Relief washed through her. At least he was happy. That mattered more than anything. But as she turned toward her room to change, a sound startled her. 3 sharp knocks at the door. Her heart jumped. She quickly grabbed her robe, tying it around her, and hurried to the living room. Noah was sitting up straight, his eyes wide, whispering, "Mom." "Someone's here." She put a finger to her lips, calming him. Then opened the door slowly. On the porch stood Daniel, her neighbor from 2 houses down. He was holding a small package in his hands. His hair was a little messy, his jacket unzipped from the cool evening breeze, and his eyes carried that gentle kindness she had noticed in passing, but never dared to acknowledge. "I think this got delivered to me by mistake," he said with a half smile, pulling out the package. His voice was steady, warm, like someone who wasn't rushing but knew the value of patience. Emily felt her cheeks heat. Her damp hair clung to her face, and the robe wrapped tightly around her reminded her just how unprepared she was for company. She wanted to vanish, but she forced a smile. "Thank you," she said softly, taking the package from him. Before she could step back, Noah peeked around her and grinned. "Hi, Mr. Daniel." His cheerful voice broke the tension. Daniel crouched slightly to greet him. "Hey, buddy," he said kindly. "You keeping your mom busy?" Noah laughed, nodding with a mouth still full of popcorn. Emily felt her heart stir at the sight. Daniel had this way of making things feel lighter, easier, without even trying. It was strange. She hadn't noticed how much she missed simple conversations with another adult until now. She wanted to say more, to thank him properly, maybe even invite him in. But the words caught in her throat. She was painfully aware of her undone hair, her bare face, her vulnerability. So instead, she forced another smile and whispered, "Good night." Daniel nodded, his eyes holding hers for just a moment longer than expected. "Good night, Emily. See you around." With that, he walked away into the quiet evening. Emily closed the door, her back pressed against it as her heart raced. She told herself it was nothing, just a neighbor being kind. But inside, she knew something had shifted. The knock on the door had stirred something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. Hope. As she tucked Noah into bed later, she replayed the moment in her head. The way Daniel looked at her, not with pity or judgment, but like he actually saw her. Not just a tired mother, not just someone surviving day by day, but a woman. She kissed Noah's forehead and whispered goodnight. But even as the house grew quiet, her heart refused to settle. For the first time in years, she lay in bed not thinking about unpaid bills or tomorrow's chores, but about a neighbor's smile on a porch lit by the fading glow of twilight. She wondered if fate had just knocked on her door literally and if she was brave enough to answer it. The shower had started as her escape, a brief moment of peace in her busy life. But tonight, it had ended with something she hadn't expected at all, a beginning she didn't see coming. And as sleep slowly pulled her in, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her story, the one she thought had ended years ago, was quietly starting again. Emily dried her hair quickly, trying to shake away the feeling that lingered from the night before. She told herself it was nothing more than a neighbor's kindness. But deep down, she couldn't ignore how her heart had raced when Daniel handed her the package. She tried to bury it, focusing on work, school drop-offs, and making dinner. Yet even as she chopped vegetables at the counter, her mind kept drifting back to the sound of his voice and the way his eyes had met hers. That evening, after dinner, Noah curled up again on the couch, cartoons flickering across the screen. Emily picked up the dishes and started washing them, humming to herself. She was just settling into the rhythm of her quiet night when a knock sounded at the door again. Her heart leaped before she even moved. She dried her hands and opened the door carefully. There he was, Daniel, this time without a package, without an excuse, just standing there with an awkward smile. "Sorry to bother you," he said, his voice low and polite. "But I wanted to check if the delivery yesterday reached you fine. And, well, I think my dog dropped his ball into your yard." Emily blinked, surprised by the small talk. Her first instinct was to laugh, but she held it back. "Yes, the package was fine," she said softly. "And if the ball's there, I'll ask Noah to bring it out tomorrow." At that moment, Noah rushed to the doorway, excitement on his face. "Mr. Daniel," he shouted, already bouncing with energy. "Do you have Max with you? Can I see him?" Daniel chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "He's waiting outside. If it's all right with your mom, he'd be happy to say hello." Noah turned pleading eyes to Emily, and she couldn't resist. She nodded, and in seconds, Noah darted out to the yard, laughter filling the evening air as Max, Daniel's golden retriever, wagged his tail wildly and bounded around. Emily stood in the doorway, watching her son laugh, feeling something tug at her chest. Daniel leaned against the porch railing, his gaze following Noah. "He's a great kid," Daniel said softly. "Reminds me of my nephew back in Boston. Full of life, full of questions." Emily nodded, her voice gentle. "He's all I've got. I try to give him everything, even if it means forgetting myself sometimes." Daniel looked at her then, really looked, and she felt her breath catch. There was no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. "You're doing more than enough," he said firmly. "But you don't have to carry it all alone, you know." She wanted to argue, to say she was fine, that she had managed all these years. But the truth was heavy inside her, and she didn't have the strength to pretend tonight. Instead, she asked quietly, "Do you ever get tired of being the strong one?" He gave a small, sad smile. "Every day." His words hung in the air, simple but honest, and she realized he carried his own kind of loneliness too.